Hi there, I'm Nathan. I'm a junior, senior-ish at USC, and we're gonna try and find out. Look at that.
Your friends leave you hanging, and boys will do the same. But the sun has always been my baby, shining through the rain.
This has been a really stressful semester. I don't think that's a controversial thing to say, and it's been pretty stressful for me, and so I thought I would try and learn something about stress and how we can deal with it. And that's how this video happened. I had the pleasure of talking to Dr. Dave Lavond and Dr. Ruth C, who are both wonderful people and really smart and know a lot about stress, how it affects us, how we can deal with it. So what follows are some snippets from my interviews with them. I'd love to do a part 2 with some more content from those interviews. I know these are busy times, so I would suggest that if you have like a minute or 5 minutes, watch that much. And I hope that much is helpful. Maybe you can come back and watch more. Anyway, I hope you just find this helpful.
So I think you can see this.
Yeah.
So what this is an inverted U kind of function. So it's upside down U. And over here we have performance. And down here we have the amount of anxiety that you have. And so what you can see is that your best performance, the optimal level performance, is if you have some anxiety, but not a whole lot.
Is there a way to tell that, like, oh, okay, I'm in the good stress zone right now?
What I would consider stress may not be the same thing that you consider to be stress. So in fact, my perception of stress is going to influence how I'm going to be able to perform. And that's independent of the actual objective amount of stress that there may be as well. Because of that, it's really hard to predict exactly would be the ideal level. The same person could have very different performances depending on just their perception of the stress that they currently have.
I just want to pop in here really quick to say I think what Dr. Lavond is talking about is really important. A lot of times, at least personally, I compare the level of stress I'm feeling with those around me in the same situation, and that is not a super healthy thing to do. And sometimes we get stressed about like not being stressed, which is nothing to be stressed about. At least I do. So to talk about living a healthy student life, here's Dr. Ruth C.
Literally, like anxiety and depression are just like your brain asking you to stop or slow down, right? Like that's part of it. And it's about really slowing down and, like I said, appreciating what you've done instead of just thinking about what you have to do. It's about putting in time for enjoyment. And I've talked to students who will go, yeah, but I have time for my friends, right? But their time with their friends is also like a productivity thing, right? So it's like, yeah, me and my friends, they volunteer here. Or I see my friends for brunch on Sunday, right? 2 hours. And so there's just, we forget about the human connection part and we just focus on achievement and accomplishment and um, doing instead of being, right? Like I tell people, you can just be, you don't have to always do. Being is fine. We have this perception that relaxation and sitting down for hours and having a conversation with a friend is somehow not doing anything, right? Also, there's a reason why writers have been famous for hanging out in bars, right? Because creativity comes in those spaces of emptiness, is what I call it, right? So when I go walking, most of my ideas come from when I'm walking. And walking is my exercise, kind of like my Zen thing. And I walk around the lake. And that's where I get a lot of my ideas. And if you're busy all the time, there is no space in your mind for creativity, right? You're doing things, but there's no space of just like imagination. So if I am just writing papers and just always doing something and never just sit down and relax and watch a TV show, read some junky whatever, buy a glamour magazine or whatever it is, or engage in a hobby, something that gives you joy and not just something that's work, right? Then I just feel like what happens is you really don't get to enjoy the fruits of your labor, your successes. You don't really get to enjoy them because enjoying them means, oh, let's go celebrate. and you click some champagne and you're like, I'm done, right? There's no, like, our body needs rest and restoration for a reason. You need sleep to be productive. And so, and that's because the brain actually needs to rest and the body needs to rest. And this is why little sleep means you have a lower immune system. So I tell people during Corona, you want to get your sleep on because your immune system is much stronger when you've been resting and your brain actually gets more creative. The memory works better, all of that. Like for college students, for example, if you stay up all the time just studying, it doesn't work. Like it's better for you to go to bed, get some sleep, and get up and study again because your brain is much more efficient when it's had rest. Your memory is better, your creativity is more on, you're sharper, you're able to focus, you have more clarity. All of that happens because of rest. So if you're busy all the time and your brain is always going, yeah, you'll feel exhausted and you feel overwhelmed and you feel stressed because your brain is like, I am done. I'm checking out. You do what you got to do. I'm over you. Like when people tell me I don't have time to eat, I was like, what does that even mean? That'd be like my car is running on empty. I'm going on a road trip and I just go, I don't have time to stop for filling up on gas. You're like, yeah, but you kind of need gas to go where you're going, right? It's the same thing. Like, how do you mean you don't have time to eat? No, what that means is you don't have time to work because eating is kind of essential. So if you find yourself, I tell people, if you find yourself saying you don't have time to eat, you're going on a path of bad health, really. Like your mental health's not going to be like it because your brain also needs nutrients. That's also important is for students to understand that your body's a machine that needs maintenance. It's the same thing with exercise, right? Like taking time to take care of our bodies because our bodies need it. So, and again, that's something people say, like, I don't have time to exercise. And what I often tell people in my workshops is that like working out and sleep actually gives you back time, right? So if you spend an hour working out, the improvement to your mental performance is worth the hour, right? So the hour is actually making the rest of your day more efficient. So if you say you don't have time for it, you're probably less productive because you don't do it, right? It's the same as sleep. If you got enough sleep, what took you an hour to remember might take you 15 minutes to remember. So that hour gave you back 45 minutes. Like I do a lot of my stuff outside because being outside, the sun is good for you. I tell people there's a reason we take vacations to sunny places. There's a reason, right? Sunshine makes us feel good for all kinds of reasons. It's good for producing vitamin D, and vitamin D is very essential to mood. So if you don't get enough vitamin D, like in Seattle and those places, they actually recommend that people take vitamin D supplements. But that's because they don't have enough sun. But if you live in a sunny place, you shouldn't be inside all the time. It's not good for up here. So I tell people if you're eating at your desk, also what you're doing is giving yourself all sorts of stomach issues, right? Because you're in a stressful environment, your body's spilling stress hormones, and you're eating in a while your stomach is being bathed in stress hormones, right? And so people will also say that they're like, I have stomach issues, and I'm like, again, there's nothing wrong with your stomach. Your stomach's just telling you something,
Mm.
right? Your stomach's trying to tell you, can you not do this to me? And you're like, oh, I got to. But I think part of it is a lot of it for college students is planning. And I see it happen. I've been a professor 20 years, where people leave it to the last minute and then they literally freak out. Like literally, like they just lose their mind. They can't focus. That sort of anxiety makes college a much more stressful experience than for students who actually are able to manage their time. So if you could take a time management thing, go on YouTube, find a free like how to manage my time as a college student, that will reduce a significant amount of stress.
And thanks to Dr. Lavond, we might be saved a trip. Here he is to talk about a studying technique that is all about time management and about learning better.
Study mass practice, which would be like cramming for a test the night before, is that you do pretty well if you test yourself immediately. So I'm not supposed to tell you that, professors don't like students cramming for tests. But if I were to test you, a week later or a month later or a year later, you do really poorly in that case. So it's much better to actually kind of spread out your learning. I recommend that you might continue to study an hour tonight for whatever class you had today, but I would break it up into smaller units. And so just to start with, I could use a value that is for how long your attention span is, which is 20 minutes. So for really high concentration kinds of things. So there's lots of evidence along this line that that if you take a number of people and have them really concentrate on something, some people will do better, some people will do worse, but the average is about 20 minutes that you can have really high levels of concentration. So study for 20 minutes, put your book away, come back 5 minutes later after taking a break, get a drink of water, eat some food, talk to a friend on your phone or whatever. Just don't get too distracted. Really important is that you've changed the way that you're thinking. Then you come back to the material, and the first thing you ask yourself, with your book closed, your notes closed, what was it I studied 20 minutes earlier? So you're immediately beginning to get some feedback and evaluate how well do I know this material. Plus you're testing yourself. That's a pretty good test to do. That's a really hard thing to do. And if you can actually do really good recall, then on a recognition test, which is what multiple choice tests are, you'll do actually even better than you thought. Recognition tests are generally easier to do. If you can do recall recognition tests, should be no problem. Let's say that you decided, you know what, I recalled everything just perfectly. Well, study for the next 20 minutes on the next bit of material. Take a break, come back. First thing you ask yourself is, what did I just study? Or what did I study 40 minutes before that? Okay, testing yourself.
Well, guys, this is pretty much the end of the video. I hope that you found the advice that Dr. Lavond and Dr. White had helpful. I did, so I hope I hope you did as well. The other thing that came up in my conversation with Dr. White that I wanted to mention is that you don't have to do this alone. There are resources out there and available to you to help you live a healthy and non-stressful life. Buzzword, stress. I don't know how many times I've said that in this video, so I apologize if that's too much. But yeah, there should be resources right now just going through. I'm gonna try and include as many links as I can in the description and in the content of the blog post. So feel free to use those. I hope they're helpful as well. Yeah, I'd like to thank you guys for watching. I'd like to thank Dr. White and Dr. Lavond for talking with me. I'd like to thank Ben Ragazza and Maddie Wu for the music. And I'd like to thank my editors for their patience with me. Yeah, that being said, I hope you guys have as unstressful a day as possible. If you have any questions for myself or any of the other writers at Trojans 360, you can ask a Trojan below and we'll get back to you. Yeah, I hope you have a great day, a peaceful day. Fight on.
People always say that the sky is falling down, but take a second and you'll see that it's just full of clouds. So easy to say that the world will stay this way. Could you believe it? Could you believe it? Could you believe it? Know that we're in so solitude. We're feeling like we had so much to lose. Oh, 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 she's my golden girl.
The other thing I think is to not strive for perfection. And, there are people who, would get really upset because I gave them their first A- or something, right? And that is not the end of the world. You're not going to get a job because you get an A- or a B+. Nobody's going to say you're not worthy because you didn't get a 4.3 GPA, like high school students. But in college students, like if you didn't get a 4.0, that's not ever going to be the end of the world, ever. You can get into Harvard grad school without having a 4.0. You can get into Columbia without getting a 4.0 for grad school. So I know it's competitive. I'm not going to argue it's not competitive. I went to really good schools. I went to LIC, I went to McGill, I went to Berkeley. So I know what elite education looks like. I've taught it at UC Berkeley, I've taught at USC, but I just think that students need to give themselves um, a break and understand that even in industry, good enough is fine. All these companies have buggy websites at some point or buggy things because they're like, this is good enough and we'll fix it as we go, right? So the need to sort of make your identity attached to your GPA is also problematic because most people won't be perfect all the time. You know, I mean, I tell people Venus Williams, you know, she loses sometimes, right? And Serena Williams loses a lot of the times. Like she doesn't win everything. So that's how I think college students have to think. It's like, yeah, you put in your best and then your best is good enough. Like